radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody. Welcome to Aron Brook Show. I hope everybody is having a fantastic, what is it? It's Wednesday. Fantastic Wednesday. And yeah, I am still in, where am I? I am in Santiago, Chile. I think we've already done one show from here. It's, as I think I said in the other show, it is a pretty beautiful city. It's pretty amazing. I mean, coming here from Buenos Aires is really interesting. Buenos Aires is clearly a city with a great past. It was obviously, you can tell from the nicest buildings, the most magnificent parts of the city are old, from the early part of the 19th century or the early part of the 20th century. It is very much a city of great wealth in the past. Santiago, Chile is a city of great wealth today. The modern buildings, the skyscrapers. There's one particular skyscraper that's very, very tall. It's an incredibly modern, dynamic city. I highly recommend visiting here. It's very different than a lot of other places in Latin America in terms of the modernity and just the newness and the amount of wealth. Now, I'm sure that there are areas of significant poverty in Santiago. I just haven't seen them. I haven't driven through them. But I'm very impressed with the main part of kind of downtown and the city. My hotel has some really beautiful views of the mountains, the Andes Mountains, and the kind of hills inside the city. It's quite green. There's a river that flows in the middle, but the river is like a concrete river. It's man-made. I mean, they took a natural river and they've just like the Los Angeles River, they've basically artificially built it so that I think they can manage floods and they can manage the snow melting in the Andes. They can manage the river rising and falling. So it's unlikely there would be a flood in Santiago, given the way they've structured this. Anyway, a fascinating place. I'm looking forward to the day. It won't be this trip, but to the day where can come down here as somewhat of a tourist and maybe go down to Patagonia here in Chile. Maybe go up north to the areas to the desert here. It's supposed to be stunningly beautiful north of Santiago, and just experience some of the beauty of Chile. If you look at a map, I encourage you to look at a map. Chile is very, very narrow and very, very long. It basically goes, all the way to the southernmost tip of South America. So it is it is an interesting place and geographically quite beautiful. The Andes go right along. It goes right along the Andes. The Andes basically separate Argentina from Chile, and it goes all the way up north to Bolivia, I think. So yes, interesting place. Look forward to coming back. We did a 2-day conference here, hosted by a free market think tank that is run by relatively famous Chilean intellectual by the name of Axel Kaiser, and they've been terrific, right? They've really been nice to us. We used their facilities for the 2-day conference. They were the ones who marketed it, brought in students and people. Yesterday was a whole day. Started basically, I think, at 10 a.m. and ended at 8 p.m. I gave a talk on the differences between objectivism, conservatism, and libertarianism. A little bit like the talk I put up the other day. I know the sound isn't great, but the talk I put up, the sound has a bit of an echo. That was a relatively short talk. I gave a longer version of that here in Chile, and that will be posted at some point. They did videotape it, so I'm hoping that'll be posted soon on my channel, so you'll be able to experience that. There were also talks by Ben Bear on morality of capitalism, on abortion. It was interesting. There was a talk here in Chile, again, another Catholic South American country, on abortion. I did a short talk on Milei, and we did an extensive Q&A discussion about Milei with a local Chilean and somebody from Argentina. And then today we had, I did a 2-hour session, on Ayn Rand's ethics, on virtues and values. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was much more kind of interactive. That one was not videotaped because it was very interactive. Couldn't have managed it with the audio and the videotaping and all of that. But it was more classroom style, which I like. Every time I do it more classroom style, I really, really enjoy it. It's not as easy to videotape it and then post it online. So I don't do many of those, but the classroom is definitely more fun. It's much more interactive. You get a lot more questions. And what I find is I don't prepare it in detail, so that I allow the questions while the discussion is going on, while I'm speaking, the questions to guide the direction that the class goes in. So you cover kind of the material that the student is really interested in and curious about. I really enjoy that. So that was a lot of fun. I did that for 2 hours today. Yeah, so busy couple of days, and getting ready to go home on Friday. So Friday, I'll be home Friday afternoon, and we'll do a show from my regular setup at home on Saturday. So yeah, I'm excited about going home. Looking forward to it. Enough traveled. I think this 1 week to 10 days is enough. I used to go on the road for like 3 weeks. I don't like it anymore. So it's not as much fun. All right. So let's jump into some of the topics we're going to talk about. I'm sure we'll talk about other things as well. I already see some super chat questions. Please keep them coming. Keep the super chat going. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, there's a big fight going on, basically between the Supreme Court of Brazil and a particular justice in the Supreme Court of Brazil, Justice Morales, and Judge Alexandre de Morales, who is and Elon Musk, and basically Twitter. Morales is again a judge in the Supreme Court of Brazil. The Supreme Court in Brazil has much more. If you think about the American Supreme Court, is quite passive, right? Stuff comes to it and it makes decisions, and the process is slow. They take oral arguments, and in Brazil, I think following more of maybe of a French tradition. I'm not sure how it's done in Spain. Maybe it's also a Spanish tradition. A French tradition where judges are activists. Judges are investigative judges. They actually go and they actually search out facts, and they can pass a judgment and in a sense be almost like an executive branch of government. So there's not a clear differentiation between the judiciary, the legislature, and the executive as there is in the American system, which I think is the right kind of system. In Brazil, and I think in also some European countries, there's less of those kind of distinctions. Anyway, this is a very activist judge who goes out there to seek what he considers justice. This judge was primarily concerned about the attempts, according to him and according to many within Brazil, of overturning the last election in Brazil. That is, the last election in Brazil, Bolsonaro lost and Lula won, somewhat paralleling, I guess, Trump losing and Biden winning in 2020. And just similar to what happened January 6th, there were riots in Brazil, and there was some claim an attempted insurrection. At least that's the claim. Morales was very active in trying to secure what he considered securing democracy. So, for example, supposedly on election day, highway police began holding up buses full of voters so they wouldn't have an opportunity to vote. Morales stepped in and told them to stop and allowed the voting to continue. When kind of the right wing made all these claims about an illegitimate election was stolen, just like they did in the United States. The difference is that in Brazil, he ordered the people arguing that the election was stolen, he ordered them banned from social media. He has that kind of power in Brazil. And then when, thousands of protesters stormed Brazil's halls of power in Brasilia, he basically arrested many of the people who were involved in allowing the demonstrations to succeed and to go unchecked. He has kind of identified himself as the savior of democracy, and I think many people on the left consider him a hero. Interestingly, this Morales, when he was appointed to the Supreme Court in 2017, he was opposed by the left because at the time he was considered a right-of-center candidate, a right-of-center judge. But he has definitely taken a kind of a fascist approach to what he is doing. He has jailed people without a trial for posting what he considers threats on social media, but notice without a trial. He's helped sentence a sitting congressman to nearly 9 years in prison for supposedly threatening the court. He's ordered raids on businesses and businessmen with really very little evidence that they have done anything wrong. He suspended an elected governor from his job, and he's unilaterally blocked dozens of accounts and thousands of posts on social media with virtually, no transparency, no lists of who has been blocked, he has basically become a mini dictator in Brazil. And my guess is that given that Lula is the president of Brazil, I don't know, how would you describe Lula? Is kind of a mafia thug. Lula is a awful, leftist, but it's more than he's just a leftist. He is unbelievably corrupt. I remember when I was in Brazil, 10 years ago, or whatever. I can't remember the year, but I was in Brazil, and I was speaking at a conference, and when my talk ended, they turned on a big television, behind the stage, and they put on the television, and on that big screen behind the stage, you could see Lula being arrested, placed in handcuffs, put into a police car, and driven away. And I think everybody in that room, me included, thought, he's going down for corruption. That's the end of Lula. He's finished, right? And indeed, he was tried, he was convicted, he was sent to jail, and everybody assumed that that was the end of Lula. That was it. The left would have to find somebody else. Well, the Supreme Court reversed the sentencing and freed him, even though he'd been accused and sentenced on corruption charges. And then he managed to run for president, get elected, right? Get elected, and he is the president of Brazil today. And Brazil is not a trivial country. Brazil is a 250 million population. It is a massive country geographically. It is by far the biggest country and the most populous country in Latin America. It has immense natural resources. It has the potential to be an incredibly rich, successful, prosperous country. Unfortunately, it's not at all, and a lot of that has to do with governance maybe one can hope that maybe the energy behind the election of Milei will spill over to places like Brazil and Chile and get somebody more free market elected in these countries. But anyway, Lula, of course, supports everything Morales has done. Morales' primary target, and not only target, but primarily target has been what is perceived to be the right. And there's a big debate going on right now in Brazil about free speech. I can tell you that somebody who's a friend of mine, somebody who's a big advocate for Ayn Rand and a big advocate for liberty and freedom and has been in the past very active in Brazil and elsewhere around the world in promoting freedom, is kind of moving out of Brazil because he's afraid, because he is going to be, they're coming after him. They're coming after anybody who stood up to Lula, anybody who might have supported Bolsonaro, anybody who argues for liberty and freedom, anybody who's arguing that Lula is a corrupt thug is in trouble in Brazil. I'll give you an example. A left-wing commentator, well-known left-wing commentator writes, quote, "Under the threat of Nazi fascist-inspired insurrection, it is worth temporarily suspending individual freedoms in the name of collective freedom." That's how you get dictatorship. And that's, I think, the direction Lula would like to go. So this has led the Morales to basically ban a number of people from Twitter. So the government has basically told Twitter, cut these people off. You're not allowed to. They can't take away their accounts. They can't post on. They can't post on Twitter anymore. This is now Morales, but also now the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice of the Brazilian saying, look, Twitter has to follow the rules. We set the rules. Twitter doesn't set the rules. And we want Twitter to silence these people, to deplatform these people. And Twitter has, under threat of both massive fines and also threat of imprisoning Twitter employees in Brazil. Anyway, the last few days, Elon Musk has punched back and basically said, no, we are going to re-platform. We're going to put back all these accounts that you've asked us to dismiss. We're not going to allow you to censor these people. The Morales has come back and threatened Twitter employees. So Elon Musk's latest is he says he's going to do a full data dump, which means he's going to disclose everybody that's been banned, all the names, all the data, the letters that have been sent by Judge Morales to Twitter. But he's only going to do that after he has moved all his employees into a safe place where supposedly the authorities can get to them. I don't know what that will actually mean, but there's a real battle here over this. What he wants is he's trying to fight for freedom of speech in Brazil, and he's trying to say I'm not gonna let this happen. He tweeted that he'd be lifting all restrictions, and that the judges applied massive fines, threatened to arrest our employees, massive fines, by the way, is $20,000 per day for each reactivated account. I don't know how many accounts there are, but I think the bigger issue is the threat to arrest employees of Twitter. That is something the CEO has to take very seriously. He also tweeted, and this is, I wish he fully understood this. I wish Elon Musk fully understood this. But he did tweet, quote, "Principles matter more than profits." Of course, principles ultimately lead to profits, but good for him for standing on principle. I wish he understood this more thoroughly. On Sunday, this last week, Morales blasted the CEO for obstruction of Brazilian justice, incitement of a crime, waging a disinformation campaign, and that he was going to open up an investigation of Musk himself. If you've seen a photo of this judge, he looks really spooky. I mean, he really looks like a dictator in the making. Anyway, back and forth. It's going to be interesting. Of course, in this kind of issue, I'm 100% behind Musk. I hope he finds a way. To, at least he's bringing the issue to the attention of the world, the extent to which Morales is a little dictator and to the extent to which Brazil's freedom of speech is really, really, really under threat. Again, Morales, just some other examples, it's not only what you'd call the so-called far right, whatever that means in this context. But he's also ordered 10 members of Congress to be completely silenced on the internet. These are members of Congress. They haven't been found guilty of any crime. He's forced Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and every other social media to remove them, even though there's been no court. They haven't been judged. They haven't, as far as we know, violated the terms of service of any of these. This is just by fiat. The Brazilian authorities are demanding that these countries deplatform them. Of course, Twitter has a mixed record here. It has deplatformed people at the request of the Turkish government, at the request of the Indian government. So there have been accounts banned. I don't know exactly why this is the battle Elon Musk is waging, why he's picked this and not with the others. Maybe he feels like he's in a stronger position here. I don't know. But good for Musk. Let's hope he succeeds. Let's hope that this creates a real backlash within Brazil against the Lula regime and against this horrible judge. I'm not sure when the next election is. I think it's in 2026. And I'm not sure who the opposition is going to put up, but hopefully it's somebody who's not named Bolsonaro, and hopefully they don't commit the same mistake the Americans are doing by presenting the alternative to Biden as Trump, and that they find somebody better, they find somebody more inspiring, they find somebody more committed to freedom, more committed to capitalism, more committed to any level of freedom than Bolsonaro or Lula. So Brazil is a country I really do love. I like the people. I think I've said this in the past. My wife and I love Rio de Janeiro. I think it's one of the most beautiful places on planet Earth. It's a vibrant, beautiful city. And yeah, I've spent a lot of time in Brazil. I've lectured all over Brazil in most of the major cities in Brazil. I've either visited or given a talk or both. And in order to give a talk, I have to visit. So yeah, so I have a, and again, it's the biggest, certainly most powerful country in Latin America, and I'm very interested in what happens here. And I think anybody who values freedom should be. I have a lot of friends in Brazil. Objectivism. There's a very active objectivist pro-free market movement in Brazil. So there are lots of reasons to root for Elon Musk in this particular challenge. Elon, 2 days ago, tweeted, "How did Alexander de Morales become the dictator of Brazil? He has Lula on a leash." Well, does he have Lula on a leash, or is he just doing Lula's bidding? I mean, Lula is ultimately a dictator, or has dictator tendencies, and so I'm not sure who has whom on a leash. But it is interesting it will be interesting to see what Morales' ambitions are. Another thing that's interesting is that a magazine like Wired, I've talked about this in the past, Wired, which used to be a tech magazine, very invested in technology, venture capital, Silicon Valley, very pro-tech, has become, over the last, 5 years or more, just a leftist rag, just a place that everything is tilted towards the leftist agenda. Wired's headline is Elon Musk is platforming far-right activists in Brazil defying court order. So by Wired's definition, Elon Musk is the bad guy because he is standing up to a authoritarian courts in Brazil that is clearly violating Brazilians' free speech. And again, Brazilians are afraid. I mean, I talked to Brazilians. I met Brazilians at our conference in Buenos Aires. I, of course, was in São Paulo a week ago, and Brazilians are afraid. Brazilians are worried. All right, let's see. So that's what I have to say about Elon Musk versus Brazil. All right, so just 1 second. Yeah. So there's been a storm on the right in the United States over the last couple of days. And this has been brewing for a long time, and I kind of have predicted it for quite a while. The general view is that the general view is that the right in the United States, the Republican Party, conservatives, are pro-Israel and will support Israel and will stand by Israel. The general view is that Trump will be a pro-Israel president and that MAGA is ultimately pro-Israel. And some of that is based on the fact that among evangelicals, evangelicals are very, very pro-Israel for bizarre religious, mystical reasons. I have warned people for a long time about relying on evangelicals and relying really even on the right in the United States, certainly on the MAGA. Given that their motivation around supporting Israel is based in religion, in faith, ultimately in mysticism, that dedication, if you will, that support for Israel could change like that. And since October 7th, we have noticed a number of people on the right not being particularly friendly towards Israel and talking against Israel and against support for Israel from a variety of different perspectives. And there's the big split, for example, at the Daily Wire between Candace Owen, or was Candace Owen's being fired, but between the Daily Wire and Ben Shapiro and Candace Owen. And there's no question that much of that was because of Candace Owens not supporting Israel and indeed supporting the Palestinians and giving a voice to pro-Palestinians and denying the horrors of October 7th and being an apologist for Hamas. And the amount of support that Candace generated from this position by many, many, many people on the MAGA right was truly astounding. I mean, she wasn't a lone voice out there, but she was generating significant support. And we've seen it across. I showed you Joe Rogan, and I don't know Joe Rogan is MAGA or right, but certainly Joe Rogan has influence on the right. And we saw Joe Rogan calling what Israel is doing in Gaza genocide. And of course, I've talked about Tucker Carlson, and there are many, many others on the right that have expressed anti-Israeli ideas, sentiments, and of course, the libertarians are particularly kind of what you'd call the right libertarians, the libertarians who tend to be on the right, are very anti-Israel. And this should worry anybody who supports Israel. What you could see across every demographic, but across every political orientation, is a steady decline among Americans in support for Israel, to the point where today a majority of Americans think Israel's gone too far, think Israel's in the wrong, and in a sense, not explicitly, but in a sense, implicitly supporting the Palestinians. Anyway, Tucker Carlson did an interview yesterday, which has created quite a stir, because Tucker interviewed yesterday a Christian Palestinian, from Bethlehem, who was super critical of Israel, accused Israel of attacking Christians, accused Israel of discriminating against Christian Arabs both in Israel and in the West Bank and Gaza, accused Israel of killing Christians. Tucker seems to have bought into this completely. And you know how Tucker does it, but emphasized these concerns, suggested that the United States should stop supporting Israel in any way because Israel was anti-Christian and attacking Christians, bought into, didn't challenge this Reverend Munther Isaac at all about his claims regarding Israel's treatment of the Christians. Statements about Israel's targeting of Christians that have no basis, really no basis, in reality. I mean, so let's just take, one of his claims, which is the claim that because of the Israeli occupation of the West Bank, the Christian population within Bethlehem has been decimated. Christians are being discriminated against. This is completely counterfactual. The reality is that before the Palestinian Authority took control of Bethlehem, the Palestinian Authority controls Bethlehem. Bethlehem, of course, a holy site for Christians. Christians were a majority there. They're now a small minority. The Palestinian Authority has been Islamizing the city, taking control over every aspect of Bethlehem. It is not Israeli occupation that is the issue. It is the Palestinian Authority and the ever-growing influence of Islamic Islamism, Islamic totalitarianism, Hamas-like ideologies in the West Bank that have created, a Bethlehem today that is a vast majority Muslim when it used to be Christian. Christians are basically left. Now, this is not unusual in the Middle East. Over the last 20 years, really over the last, since over the last 50 years, the Christians of Lebanon used to be equal numbers to the Muslims. Christians of Lebanon have left. They are now closer to 20-30% of Lebanon when they used to be about 50. The Christians of Syria have left. Christians from Iraq have left. Christians all over the Middle East have left. There's been a huge outmigration of Christians as the Middle East has become more serious about its Islam. Same thing is happening in the Palestinian territories. As the Palestinian territories become more committed to the Islamic ideology, so Christians are leaving. Now, this reverend just repeated claims that are just untrue. Claims about Israeli snipers killing civilians in a church, which are being refuted. Just story after story that he's making up, or repeating things that are known now to be false, to try to establish that Israel is anti-Christian and committing horrors against Christians. Now, Christian Arabs live in Israel. They have equal rights. Churches have the same kind of religious authority as mosques and synagogues. They have they have control over. There's complete freedom of religion, in other words, in Israel. This is completely made up. Now, it turns out that this preacher, this reverend, praised Hamas for October 7th, or at least did not denounce them. He used some slightly ambiguous language to describe them. This is a man who hates Israel, who despises the state, who wants the state of Israel to disappear. He is on the side of the radical Islamists and on the side of the Palestinian Authority in their wish to eradicate the state of Israel. Tucker Carlson not only gave him a platform, but amplified it and emphasized that American foreign policy should be guided by whether a country's attitude towards Christians. So Tucker says at the start of the program, he said, a consistent but also never noted theme of American foreign policy is that it is always the Christians who suffer. Really? Really? I guess Russian Christians are worth more to Tucker than Ukrainian Christians. Yeah. I guess the persecution of Christians by regime after regime in the Middle East is not worth commenting on except when the United States is involved. And then he adds, when, quote, when there's a war abroad that the United States is funding, it is Christians who tend to die disproportionately. Note how Tucker has become obsessed with Christians, Christianity. He's become, this has been a theme for Tucker for quite a while now. He's really gone off the deep end in terms of his Christian nationalism, national conservatism, really bad. And then he goes after, he spends his time going after evangelicals in the United States for their support of Israel. He says you shouldn't be supporting Israel. Israel persecutes Christians, and yet you care more about the Jews than you do about Christians. Stop supporting Israel. I think you're going to see a bigger and bigger voice for this point of view, and you're going to see evangelicals shift. Already, that shift exists in young evangelicals who are much more sympathetic to the Palestinians than they are to the Israelis. Altruism demands it, ultimately. And you're going to see a significant weakening of support for Israel from the right. This part of the right that is anti-Israel and, at least in some cases, anti-Semitic, is growing in influence. The right is being completely intellectually corrupted. And those of you, I don't know if Scott is on today, those of you who want alliances with these creeps, want alliances with these people, not me. I don't want to have anything to do with the Tuckers of the world and the American New Right, the anti-Semitic, anti-Israeli, anti-American, most importantly, anti-American New Right, hate the Constitution, hate the Declaration of Independence, hate individual rights. That is Tucker Carlson. Yes. So Tucker gave a platform to this guy. And conservatives are attacking him. Like the pro-Israel conservatives are attacking him all over the place. This is going to, I think Israel is going to be a real battle within the conservative movement. You've got the Candace Owen and Tucker Carlson and wing of the New Right, and there are going to be many else who join this wing and who are going to advocate against Israel, against American support for Israel. You've got the old evangelicals, just like the older left, that supports Israel, whereas the young evangelicals and the young left hate Israel. And right now, again, a majority of Americans think Israel is in the wrong when it comes to Gaza. And this is ultimately a great tragedy. And, we will see what we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens if Trump wins and how MAGA, what position MAGA takes. Remember that Marjorie Taylor Greene, one of the leaders of MAGA in Congress, I can't even believe I said that. She's a complete wacko. Remember her with the Jews with lasers? And I mean, she's a complete nutcase. Anyway, she is one of the leaders of the Republican Party these days. She's not exactly pro-Israel. Not ultimately. Anyway, it'll be interesting whether this hurts Tucker or ultimately helps Tucker, whether this increases the kind of anti-Israeli, anti-freedom wing of the Republican Party. All right, what is our next topic? Where are we going from here? Yeah, quickly, just on inflation. Inflation numbers came in today higher than expected. Not significantly higher, but higher. The stock market took a dive. The interest rates spiked. The 10-year bill spiked. The Fed, which has been talking about reducing interest rates for months now, is going to have to really think about it. They assume that there is a correlation between interest rates that the Fed determines and inflation. That is, as the Fed decreases interest rates, there's a risk of inflation increasing. So in order to suppress inflation, the story goes, conventional economics tells us, you have to raise interest rates. Well, inflation is high. Interest rates, they thought about lowering them, which would be bad for inflation, according to them. They are now going to hesitate lowering them and increasing them as a consequence. Again, assets are being repriced with the assumption that interest rates are going to be higher for longer, which means asset values are lower. That means that any financial assets, again, everything else held constant, has declined in value and got hit today. Banks got hit in particular, but so did assets across the spectrum. And again, interest rates, 10-year interest rates went up. Mortgage rates above 7% again. This optimism that I think was pretty prevalent around the turn of the year, which suggested that inflation had been beat, that we were not going to have a recession, it was going to be a soft landing, everything looked great, and the economy was going to be terrific, and that would ultimately bolster Biden's re-election campaign. I'm not sure that's happening. It really does look like that is challenged, and that maybe inflation is not beat. Maybe interest rates will have to go up even more. Maybe there is still a recession in the horizon. And any talk about inflation, bad economy, potential recession, mortgage rates going up, and the stock market going down is not helpful for Joe Biden. Of course, the stock market has just hit record levels, so it's going down after hitting record levels. But still, this is going to be a big issue in the election, but it's a big issue for all of us, right? We have to live with high inflation. High inflation, not a good thing, and it's something we are definitely being challenged with. All right, Arizona. So the Arizona Supreme Court ruled yesterday, today, this morning, I can't tell. But anyway, ruled very recently to uphold a law from before Arizona was a state, a law that is 160 years old, again, from before Arizona was a state, that basically banned abortion completely. I think with some exception for the patient's life is in danger, banned all abortion from conception. This law will go into effect probably in about 60 days. Basically all abortions will be banned in the state of Arizona. Now, this is in spite of a law that was passed a couple of years ago that said that banned abortions after 15 weeks. The Supreme Court ruled that law had a provision in it that if the court upheld the 19th century law, the new law was null and void, and the court just went by the letter of the law. And because Dobbs did away with the law of the land, which was Roe, Roe versus Wade. So the law of the land was abortion is a right and therefore is legal. Since that went away, the law of the land in Arizona is a 160-year-old law. Now this creates big problems for Republicans. So first of all, Republicans have come out and and gone after the ruling from the Supreme Court, which is interesting. So Carrie Lake, who, if you remember, ran for governor, lost, claimed the election was stolen, did a whole thing and a whole circus around the election stolen. Anyway, she is now the Republican candidate for the Senate. These MAGA nutcases never die. They keep getting resurrected. Anyway, she's running for Senate. When Dobbs passed, Roe versus Wade was eliminated, she was very positive about Arizona going back to the 160-year-old law. She thought it was a great law, and she supported it. Yesterday, she said that the ruling was unfortunate, it wasn't a good ruling, and she encouraged the governor and the legislature to come up with an immediate common sense solution. Again, 2 years ago, she said that the 19th century law was a great law. The reality is Republicans know that if they run on an agenda of completely banning abortion, they will lose. And so Carrie Lake has backed off of her support for a total ban on abortion and is encouraging the legislature and the governor to come up with something else. Of course, the governor, who's a Democrat, has no interest in really coming up with something else because on the ballot in November, Arizona has an amendment to make abortion legal completely with no restrictions. Now, given this 19th century law, this is going to increase turnout among the left, turnout among Democrats, or turnout among anybody who supports abortion. And therefore, it increases the chances that people will come out and vote against Republicans, particularly Republicans who stand up against abortion. So Carrie Lake has a very delicate, dance to dance here. But if there's a great turnout of people who support abortion rights in November, Carrie Lake will probably lose. And there's a chance, at least, that Donald Trump will lose. Now, Donald Trump knows this. Donald Trump is if nothing else, he's a political animal. He understands politics. He understands what is going to get him elected. So earlier this week, Donald Trump came out and said, everybody's expecting some statement from Donald Trump about abortion. And the expectation was that he would say that he supports a federal ban on abortion from, 15 weeks or 20 weeks or something like that, which would be a compromise, right? Donald Trump surprised everybody on the right by coming out and saying, I will not support any federal ban on abortion. I will actually veto a bill that came to my office if such a bill came. I support every state making its own decision about abortion. This shocked many people on the right. It surprised them. But the reality is that Donald Trump looks at the latest elections and looks at the referendum around abortion and looks at the polls around abortion, and he gets it. He gets that Americans in the swing states where he needs to win, in those states, Americans support abortion rights. He is not going to win Arizona if he comes out against abortion. So he's basically saying every state will make their own decision, and that frees him from taking a solid stand on the issue. Now, he still has to say he's against abortion in order to secure the religious rights vote, but he probably has those anyway. What he needs are the swing votes, and for those, he needs to have a much more moderate position on the issue of abortion, and he's taken that position. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in Arizona. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays into the November election. But, Republicans are terrified that there are going to be all these states where the issue that really gets voters to come out is going to be abortion, where they are voting on some kind of referendum about abortion. And once they're there, they're going to vote against Republicans. The reality is that the abortion issue is one that has motivated voters significantly since Dobbs eliminated Roe versus Wade. Abortion rights amendments have been passed in states that you would not expect it. It's solidly red states. And Republicans are afraid of this issue. And Trump did what makes sense politically, completely to do, which is to, not having to take on the issue. And by the way, he's not going by the Supreme Court decision. Actually passing a federal law, which is what the right wants to do, which many Republicans want to do, is not against the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court just said there's no right. Legislature, go do your thing, pass laws. So, the Congress is within its right, given the Supreme Court ruling, to pass a law banning abortion nationwide. What Trump is saying is he will not support that because he knows that electorally would be suicide. Suicide. And you will see that this is going to become a huge issue for November. There are a number of states that are going to have it on the ballot. And it's going to be challenged in a number of states. They're going to have constitutional amendments, others, and a lot of these states are going to be swing states. And Trump is trying to take this off, trying to eliminate this as an issue by saying, let the states do what they want. We'll see. Right? SCOTUS did not toss it back to the states. SCOTUS tossed it back to legislatures. He tossed it back to legislatures, including the federal legislature. SCOTUS did not say that you couldn't have a federal ban on abortion or you couldn't have a federal law about abortion. What they said was it wasn't constitutionally protected by the constitutionally protected, and therefore they couldn't overrule a state law or a federal law. So actually have to understand what the Supreme Court is actually saying. All right. By the way, with regard to Arizona, Trump again said that he was against the Arizona law, the Arizona ruling, that he'd like Arizona to come up with a more reasonable one. By the way, Florida is going to have a constitutional amendment. A proposition to alter the Constitution in favor of abortion rights, and that is going to be in the November ballot. Now, I don't know that could swing Florida away from Trump, but it could swing some of the some congressional seats. It could swing a Senate contest. That is, it could swing some other elections within Florida away from Republicans in favor of Democrats, and the Republican Party is really, really scared. They're running scared of this. It's not me. Read what Republicans are writing about this. It's no accident that Carrie Lake suddenly is for compromise on the issue of abortion when she was adamant about no compromise on this issue not that long ago. All right, finally, talking about Florida. Florida in 2023 passed a law that restricted educators' teachers' use of personal pronouns and titles in schools. So it basically said you had to use the pronoun of the sex to which you were born, right? The gender to which you were born. This is part of a series of laws that, banned, cross-dressing performances and all kinds of other things. But part of this was for schools, you couldn't present yourself as having a different gender than the gender you were born with in terms of the pronoun you identified yourself with. A federal court on Tuesday blocked education officials, Florida education officials, from enforcing this law, requiring a transgender teacher to use pronouns that aligned with her sex assigned at birth, saying the law violated her First Amendment rights. And the judge is pretty brutal against, this is from Judge Mark Walker's decision. He writes, Once again, the state of Florida has a First Amendment problem. Of late, it has happened so frequently, some might say that you can set your clock by it. This time, the state of Florida declares that it has the absolute authority to redefine your identity if you choose to teach in a public school. So the question before this court is whether the First Amendment permits the state to dictate without limitation how public school teachers refer to themselves when communicating to students. The answer is a thunderous no. I agree. I mean, whatever you think about transgender and I think that to a large extent the horrors of the whole thing, the idea that the state can tell people how to self-identify and what they can and cannot call themselves is absurd, even in state schools. Part of the question is how they identify themselves a pedagogical issue? And the judge says it's not a pedagogical issue. This is not an issue of pedagogy. This is an issue of free speech. He writes, given the personal self-identifying speech at issue in this case and the broad application of this restriction to every employee or contractor in the public K through 12 context, regardless of whether they are responsible for teaching students, this court concludes that the restriction itself is not simply a pedagogical or curriculum choice. All right, good ruling in Florida, and another setback for the, the absurd agenda of the absurd anti-woke agenda of the DeSantis administration. So another setback. He's had many of these setbacks before, right? Government has no business in this. All right, let's see. I mean, this is a simple First Amendment issue. You don't have, the state does not tell you how to identify yourself. I mean, the fascists on the chat would like the state to be able to tell you. I mean, it's none of the state's business what I call myself, what I do with my own body, whether I have an operation to reassign my sex. I don't support that necessarily, but it's none of the state's business. You are the state's property. You own, you are owned by the state, and therefore the state can dictate what you do with your body. This goes to the abortion issue. It goes to the trans issue. It goes to freedom of speech issues. The state should keep out of these issues. All right, let's see. All right, let's open this up to a super chat. Let me remind you all. It's getting hot in this room. Let me remind you all that we do have sponsors for the show. We have the Ayn Rand Institute that sponsors the show, and you can still register. There's another 5 days to register to apply for a scholarship for OCON, the Objectives Conference. OCON's going to be fantastic. It's in Anaheim this year, right across from Disneyland. The program is amazing. You're going to have lectures by the leading objectivist intellectuals. And socially, it's a terrific event with a lot of time to kind of get to know your fellow attendees, to form new friendships, to renew old friendships. It's just a little piece of Gulch Gulch is offered by OCON every summer. So I encourage you guys to attend. And those of you who think you might qualify for a scholarship, apply. You've got nothing to lose by applying, and it's all paid, all expenses paid scholarship. I mean, all reasonable expenses paid. And you can apply at aynrand.org/start here. aynrand.org/start here. Also, the show is sponsored by Alex Epstein, by Energy Talking Points, and Alex AI, which is a new AI app that Alex has created that basically provides you with answers as if Alex is answering your questions on energy. So it's focused on energy. I think Alex is the best thinker about energy issues in the world today. I think he integrates both knowledge of the science, the evidence, and a deep knowledge of philosophy, of what is entailed in human flourishing. And he provides a unique combination of the knowledge of philosophy and the specialized knowledge of the field. He has been incredibly successful. Alex AI is being used today by congressmen, by senators, by governors, but anyway, by senior people within the political world. It's used by many thinkers and public intellectuals, and it's something that you should consider using, particularly if you're interested in this area, and if this is of importance to you, particularly if it relates to your life, to your life energy issues. So you can go to alexepstein.substack.com, 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 and sign up for the talking points, and sign up for the get a subscription to the chat GPT like Alex AI. All right, let's see. Just on the Florida thing, the state cannot dictate what somebody calls themselves, or shouldn't be able to dictate what somebody calls themselves. It's stupid. Now, there shouldn't be state schools. There shouldn't be any government schools. The government is going to dictate the curriculum, okay. But to dictate what a teacher says and how a teacher identifies themselves, that is bizarre and ridiculous, and I think that will not stand the court scrutiny. So you guys who are, government schools should disappear. They should be privatized, all of them, and then the government certainly has no say in them. But now government employees throughout the government are they're going to be told what they have to identify with, and what they can and cannot say because they happen to be government employees. I mean, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. All right. Let's see. Okay, Michael. All right, by the way, just a reminder to everybody, this show is funded from contributions by listeners like you. If you're not here live, you can support the show by going to Patreon or doing it on YBS.com/membership. That would be PayPal. You can support the show that way on a monthly basis, which is fantastic. The monthly basis is what keeps the show going. If you're here live on YouTube, one option to support the show is using Super Chat. You can use Super Chat to ask a question, which always is great because it helps shape the show. But you can also just use a sticker just to express support for what I am doing with the show. So please consider doing that. I have targets for these shows in terms of a goal for the amount of money needs to be raised, just so we can sustain the program, we sustain what we're doing. So please, we try to reach those targets as often as we can. We haven't done a long show like we're doing today in quite a while, so I did set the target at 650, which I think is consistent with what we've done in the past. All right, John, thank you for the $20. Really, really appreciate it. Ryan, thank you. Stephen, thank you. These are stickers. These are people not asking questions, just showing support by giving a sticker. You can too. $1.99, $2.99, $5.99. Stephen just did 10. Thank you, Stephen. So thank you to all the people doing stickers and supporting the Iran Book Show and what we're trying to do in the Iran Book Show and the expansion of the Iran Book Show that is coming. Ooh, I was going to do a poll today, and I forgot to set up the poll. Okay, so maybe tomorrow's show will have a poll. By the way, tomorrow we will have a show at 1 p.m. East Coast time. 1 p.m. East Coast time. There will be the next show, and then the next show after that will be on Saturday. All right, Michael, $100. Thank you, Michael. Really, really appreciate the support. We need more supporters like Michael who value this rather than complainers. All right. Michael says, despite the real distinctions between libertarianism and objectivism, a higher percentage of libertarians are fans of Ayn Rand than the number of Republicans who are Rand fans. Despite Rand's objection to the Libertarian project, Rand created more libertarians than any other thinker. I think that's true, but is that a good thing? That is having a lot of libertarians a good thing? If I look at the Libertarian Party, I think not, that it's not a good thing to have more libertarians. I'm sure Dave Smith and others within the Libertarian Party who I believe hate America, who are anarchists, who despise Israel, hate Ukraine, love Putin. I'm sure they all would say that Ayn Rand was an influence on them. I mean, with influence like that, that is not helpful. It doesn't support anything. It doesn't move us in the right direction. Indeed, quite the opposite. It's people like that retard the progress of free markets. It's these moral subjectivists, anarchists, who I believe retard the progress towards liberty and freedom, that make us look like we're crazy if we support free markets. So I do not consider the fact that that there were a lot of libertarians that Ayn Rand created a good thing. It's not clear to me that I don't think libertarianism is moving us necessarily in the right direction. Now, again, not all libertarians. Some libertarians are good and they do good work and they move us in the right direction, but not all libertarians. And this is why libertarianism is such a murky concept. It includes all kinds of people, some of whom are really, really good, and some of them are really, really horrible, right? And not helpful. Those kind of libertarians and, people who say Ayn Rand influenced them but didn't get it, don't understand individual rights, don't understand the role of reason in human life, don't understand the role of rational egoism in morality, they're not helpful. And to some extent, they're harmful. So again, they're not just distinctions. I mean, this is a point I was trying to make in my talk, and I make even more so in my other talk that hopefully I'll post soon. It's not about distinctions between libertarianism and objectivism. Libertarian and objectivism have very little overlap. Certainly, if you consider objectivism as a philosophy, libertarianism is only a political philosophy, and even as a political philosophy, it doesn't have that much overlap. And you can see that on the extent to which libertarianism is, some libertarians, are unbelievably hostile to the good, to rights, to, I think, virtue out there in the world, and are friendly to people like Putin. All right. Let's see. These are all $20 questions. We'll get to those. Excellent. All right. Still need 10 $20 questions or 2 $100 questions, but in order to make our goal, I think we can do it. All right. Liam says, even if most people don't take altruism that seriously, all it takes is a small dose of it in a person or a culture's psyche to generate enough moral confusion to cause societal damage. Absolutely. Absolutely. It doesn't take much altruism to cause you to feel guilty when you shouldn't feel guilty. That guilt then can cause you to take positions which you shouldn't take. A little bit of altruism can cause you to try to defend capitalism on the wrong grounds, on utilitarian grounds, or other grounds, which then undermine the actual advance towards capitalism. A little bit of altruism can really do damage on a personal level to you in terms of your ability to be happy, your ability to achieve in life, your ability to be guilt-free in terms of unearned guilt, and it can do massive damage on a societal level because it's what ultimately encourages taxes and regulations and controls and big government and intrusive government and ultimately authoritarianism. And altruism is everywhere. And for most of us who learn about rational egoism, who learn about objectivism, learn from Ayn Rand, it can take us years to get rid of the elements of altruism, and some people never get rid of them. And it hampers their ability to be happy. It really does. Remember, altruism doesn't mean just being nice to people. Altruism here means that the moral purpose of life is sacrifice, self-sacrifice for the sake of others. That others, are the purpose of your life. All right, Ryan, what is the benefit of stating a date for the Rafah invasion? Seems idiotic. I get that you need to allow civilians to prepare, but 12 hours seems better notice. If you want to save IDF soldiers from being killed, huge blunder. Well, yeah, but I mean, what's new here, right? Netanyahu says he has a date, but the American government is saying no, he hasn't got a date. They are going to do this in steps. They're going to allow the civilians to evacuate. They're going to set up checkpoints to make sure it's only civilians evacuating and not Hamas troops. All this delay in time is going to increase the possibilities of errors and mistakes and more international pressure on Israel. All this is going to provide more time for Hamas to prepare and to organize itself for the advance of the Israelis into Rafah. They should go tomorrow. So idiotic, self-sacrificial, self-destructive, suicidal, those are all the names that I can think of, terms that I can think of that apply. And, initially, if you remember, I was very skeptical that Israel would do the right thing in Gaza. Then there was a period where it was like, maybe they're doing more than I expected. Not the right thing, not everything I would have proposed that they do, but maybe better than I expected. And now it's back to Netanyahu's a wimp. He's always been a wimp. He waits. He's not decisive. He doesn't make quick decisions. He procrastinates and procrastinates and procrastinates, and he gives Israel's enemies more and more and more time, and he gives our enemies more and more time to put pressure on it, and as a consequence, the right thing will not be done, and as a consequence, all the areas that Israel has now left in Gaza, there are significant reports of Hamas reestablishing its control over those areas. Reestablishing control in the way of police, in the way of infrastructure, and in the way of militants, of soldiers, of terrorists. So what have you done? The whole idea was to dismantle Hamas and its ability to govern. How can Israel do that when it retreats immediately from territory it has occupied? If it doesn't stay, if it doesn't guarantee the eradication of Hamas, and for that matter, if there's going to be aid being provided to the Palestinians, Israel should manage that process. It shouldn't let Hamas manage the process. Israel should be guarding those trucks from point of entry all the way to delivery of the aid to the civilians, and not let Hamas steal it, but also not let Hamas manage the process. Because if they're managing the process, they're the equivalent of the government of Gaza. And the whole point was to eliminate any possibility that there would ever be the government of Gaza. So it's just unbelievably discouraging what is going on in Gaza right now. And the dithering and then the negotiating again, and every 2 days Hamas turns down the Israeli proposal, so Israel compromises some more, and then Hamas it turns that down, and Israel compromises some more, and Hamas turns that down. And at the end, Israel might as well just leave Gaza, tell them to keep the hostages, and call it quits. It's just pathetic. But this is altruism. This is altruism in every aspect. It's what is guiding Netanyahu, it's what is guiding the Israeli public, and it's what's guiding the American administration and everybody who's commenting on this. It's disgusting. James, I have never heard an argument against free will that didn't end up implying free will. Can you think of one? Well, not really, other than let's take Augustine's argument against free will. Basically says everything's predetermined. Every action that you will take in life has already been determined. And the ultimate decision in life, which is whether you go to heaven or hell, was determined before you were born. So everything's preset. I'm not sure why you should care about anything you do at that point, because it's all predetermined anyway. But yeah, but even in that, well, how do people actually live on a day-to-day basis? What does it mean not to exercise will? What does it mean not to actually make decisions? What do you just drift? I mean, what does it actually look like? I guess you just drift. Don't make decisions. You just go with the flow. All right, Hopper Campbell. Without Ayn Rand, will Aristotle be defeated? I mean, not in the long run. He will make a comeback. There will be another Ayn Rand. It might be 1,000 years. It might be 500 years. I don't know. But it's not like Ayn Rand came out of Ayn Rand came, in a sense, she did come out of a void, but there was an enlightenment, there was a renaissance, there was a rediscovery of Aristotle, then there was Ayn Rand. But let's say if you eliminate Ayn Rand, Aristotle will be defeated, and then he will rise up again. And ultimately, there will be an Ayn Rand. Ultimately, truth will be discovered. Ayn Rand was not the only person in all of the human future with the ability to discover the truth. It might have taken a few more hundred years, but it would be all discovered. So no, I don't think Aristotle will ever be defeated completely, thoroughly eliminated. I think he will always make a comeback. Jennifer, Yonatan would like you to comment on the effects BRICS may have. Thank you. So yeah, BRICS are BRICS is originally Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. I think ultimately the BRICS are a destabilizing force in the world, but really, Brazil doesn't matter. And South Africa doesn't matter. India is starting to matter, but the only countries that really matter in the BRICS are Russia and China. Now, they've just added a bunch of countries to the BRICS, and actually Argentina turned them down, which is another reason I like Milei, is that he turned down membership in the BRICS, which is fantastic, right? So he's not enamored by Putin. But the real BRICS issue is an issue of China and Russia. And will China and Russia have an impact on the world? Absolutely. Will BRICS, independent of Russia and China, have an impact on the world? Very little. The fact is that BRICS are poor, weak. They have no influence. There might be a lot of them. Ultimately, a lot of countries might join BRICS, but they have no real power outside of Russia, China, India. India is so far sided on a lot of issues with the West. Russia is a real disruptor, as we see in Ukraine, and we will see in Europe for years to come. China is a disruptor, but still has to make up its mind on how bad it's going to disrupt, and how committed it is to disruption versus to trade and versus to its own development. So I wouldn't rule out that ultimately China, I think China is a force for ill right now in the world, but will it be a force for ill long term is really hard to tell. Again, I spoke to somebody today who's very, not today, but in Argentina, who's very knowledgeable about China, knows China in and out, and he thinks China is going to come back. That is, liberty in China is going to come back. I think that China is, China is the real challenge that we face, and of course Russia. So, do I think the BRICS are going to establish a new currency? Do I think no? They can't even agree among each other. I mean, China and India are enemies. They have a border dispute. Russia and China don't really agree on much. The main thing they agree about is hatred of the West. Brazil is super leftist. Putin is super fascist. China wants influence globally. China considers itself superior to all of these people. I think at the end of the day, what really matters is what China does and what Putin does. Putin, though, is weak. China's much stronger. So the end of the day, of the BRICS, the only one that really matters is China. I've done shows on the BRICS in the past. I just don't think as qua BRICS they are important. All right. Clark. Do people have trouble responding to reason? They can't even recognize a rational argument is being presented to them. Yes, I think absolutely. I think people have a problem engaging with rationality, with reality, with thinking. I think we live in a world that is dominated by emotion, dominated by tribal thinking, and it is not a culture of thinking people, at least not outside of kind of their professional lives. And as a consequence, they have a hard time presenting rational arguments, dealing with rational arguments, dealing with facts, dealing with reality. Hell, you can see it on my chat. You don't have to go very far in order to see the lack of reason and rationality and the lack of egoism, because for whatever reason, these people who hate me are still here. Still here. It's bizarre, weird. They spend a significant amount of their life on the Iran Book Show. That Doodle Bunny. Is our subconscious a war between proclivities and motivations goals? Well, it can be if you don't bring order to it. One of the ways it means to activate reason and to think and to, be a thinking, rational, conceptual, reasoning being is to bring order and to get rid of the contradictions and the battles that might be going on between what's going on, between your different values and your different goals. I don't know what proclivities are. I don't even know what that term ultimately refers to. And the whole idea is to make your goals, your values real to you, and to organize them and to structure them and to organize your life around them and to make sure that, that they're consistent. So, and to get rid of any conflicts and wars. I don't think that is the nature of man. I think a lot of us are at war in the sense that we are raised on a particular ethic, we're raised with particular ideas, and then we change them and there's still a conflict and we haven't completely integrated them. But that's the job, that's the work that has to be done. Integrate your values in a way that is non-contradictory, in a way that does not create conflict in your mind, conscious or subconscious. Doodle Bunny, we always discuss the tyranny of the state and coercion between human beings. But what about the tyranny of your soul? Can you tyrannize yourself? No, you can't tyrannize yourself. Tyranny is something that involves coercion and force. And your mind is your mind. And you control it. This is the whole point about free will. You are in control of your mind. You are in control of your soul. You determine what your mind and your soul are and what they will be. It requires work to get to the point where you are satisfied with the kind of soul that you are creating, where you're consciously creating your soul in a way that is consistent with your explicit values. But that's the work that has to be done. The soul can't tyrannize you. The soul is under your control. You are the builder of your soul. It's the choices that you make, the values that you determine. That is your soul. Now, you can argue that some people don't spend the time creating a soul, and in a sense they don't have one, and then they're terrorized by their emotions. They're terrorized by their unthinking subconscious, if you will. But that's because they lack a soul. That's because they haven't spent the time, the energy to actually do it. Liam asked, why can't most people think beyond their nose? Well, they haven't been taught to think. They haven't, they don't understand the motivation. And look, most people can think beyond their nose because most people are working for a living. They're producing, they're creating, that requires thought. It's that they don't think consistently and they don't think beyond their nose beyond the work that they do, and they don't apply it more broadly. I mean, you should it basically is a lack of consistency. It's a lack of effort. It's a lack of engagement and a lack of motivation because they don't understand the importance of thinking. Hopper Campbell. Is anyone who uses the word genocide or apartheid to characterize the state of Israel a vicious anti-Semite? Everyone? Probably not. There are probably some ignorant people out there who just don't know and don't understand. But certainly educated people, people who should know better, people who have access to the information and who can observe it. Yeah, I think people are using genocide and apartheid who have some ability to investigate and to know the world and have some knowledge of the world around them. Yes, I think for them, it's a sign that they are motivated by something else, not knowledge, not reality, not truth, but by some other motivation, some hatred. Anti-Semitism could very well be part of that motivation. Andrew Traeger. The moral is the practical. Republicans can announce support for IVF, opposition to Arizona ruling, but pronouncements don't rewrite reality. The effects of being wrong on the principle of abortion are real and won't go away. I agree completely, Andrew. I mean, and the idea, the conservative, crazy, religious, mystical idea that human life it begins at conception, and at conception, therefore, the entity that is created gains rights. That massive philosophical error, evasion, if you will, has massive consequences. It means IVF is not a procedure that is legitimate. It involves murder. It means that, wait a minute, how can you abort at 15 weeks? How can you abort at 5 weeks? It's murder. So yes, absolutely. Once you accept the irrational proposition that a zygote has rights, you can try to weasel your way around these things, but the reality is that you are anti-IVF, anti-abortion completely, and you're anti-life. You're anti-human life. You're anti-women. You're also anti-children, but that's a whole other issue. You're anti-human life. And you need to suffer the consequences. And I think Republicans have, are, and will suffer the consequences of the complete irrationality of their position on abortion. And I hope they continue to suffer the consequences. Shazbat, could you comment on Ben Shapiro's video regarding being a cultural Christian? Your show on the topic was cut off by internet issues. Yes, but I will be doing a show on it, Shazbat, so I'm not going to answer the question now. I will be probably, maybe on Saturday, I want to show clips from both, Dawkins, and clips from Ben Shapiro, and comment to those clips. I don't want to just comment without showing you what he actually said. So that will be the topic, maybe of Saturday's show. If not of Saturday's show, then Sunday or Monday. But it will be a topic of a show coming up really, really soon. So stay tuned for that. And I know it cut off, but I don't want to do it on the road. There's too much risk of technology for cutting off again. Too many windows have to be open on my little laptop. So it's too complicated for me to do a show on the road where I show you clips of somebody else and comment on them. I will wait to do that from home. All right, guys. I hate to do this. We're still short on the a goal. We're still about $200 short on the goal, so I do encourage anybody who wants to support the show. Haven't done a lot of shows this month, so I haven't asked you a lot, but the show is already an hour and a half, so $6.50 is usually our target for shows that are an hour and a half to 2 hours long. We will be shifting schedules next week, so my shows will be they'll be longer. There'll be fewer shows but longer, and I will be setting some ambitious goals for the shows. I hope there's enough support and interest on the live chat to sustain the new schedule, because otherwise I'll have to shift it again. But 650 is pretty much what we're going to be trying to raise every single day in order to sustain the new schedule. So hopefully we can still make it today. All right. Michael, why did Atlas Shrugged sell so many more copies than The Fountainhead, given that The Fountainhead is a smaller and easier to process novel? Well, I think because Atlas Shrugged has such broad appeal. It is such it affects and speaks to so many aspects in life. It has a unique appeal to businessmen, a unique appeal to entrepreneurs, and I think became a success because businessmen and entrepreneurs picked it up. It has such a big statement, and it's so I think that's why. It also, it got a lot of publicity, much more than The Fountainhead. It got a lot of publicity because so many business leaders and other leaders came out and said, "This is a book that changed my life. This is a book that's huge influence. This is a book that, in a sense, helped me be what I am." Anyway, from so many of Silicon Valley founders, we've talked about this, Forbes 500 CEOs across the board have credited Atlas Shrugged, and I think that's had a huge impact, and that's why. It's more philosophical. It's more pro-capitalism, put it that way. Fountainhead is more about the ethics. Atlas is more pro-capitalism explicitly. It's implicit in Fountainhead. It's explicitly and therefore picked up by the pro-capitalist, the people who are pro-capitalist. They got behind it, even if they didn't understand its wider implications. Hopper Campbell, thoughts on Alan Dershowitz's debate with Norman Finkelstein yesterday? I haven't seen it. I thought Dershowitz did a good job taking the moral high ground and articulating moral clarity. I wouldn't be surprised. Alan Dershowitz is a good debater. Norman Finkelstein is awful, horrible human being, and awful in every respect. So I'm not surprised that Dershowitz is also a lawyer. He's sharp, he's quick, and he's very pro-Israel, and he knows the arguments, at least most of them. So I'm not surprised Dershowitz won the debate or was better at it. My debate, by the way, as soon as it comes out, I will let you know. James Taylor, is the concept of war crimes invalid? There can be no crimes in a state of war since you have to do whatever it takes to win. Yes, I mean, there is no validity. I mean, what's a war crime? War is the crime, right? The real crime is war. The real crime is initiating force in a war. So starting a war, that's the real crime. Now what happens in the war, if you initiate it, everything you do is evil and wrong, is a crime, and those defending themselves have to do whatever they need to do in order to defend themselves. All right. Michael, will Israel still invade Rafah? Yes, I think it will. Will it be a bloodbath of civilian casualties? No, I don't think so. I think Israel will evacuate a lot of civilians. It will go in, just like Gaza wasn't a bloodbath for civilians. I don't think it will be. Yes, I think that Israel will manage to take over Rafah without huge numbers of casualties and will control Rafah. The question is, will it do enough to dismantle Hamas? Will it capture or kill all the Hamas leadership? Will it destroy the entire Hamas infrastructure? Will it actually do that? It will capture Rafah. Not enough. It has to do a lot more than that. And I'm worried that they're not going to do everything that's necessary. Liam, a lot of Canadians I speak with say the authoritarianism is getting out of hand. People being fined or arrested for speech, economic decay. I think that's right. That's a sense I'm getting from Canada. The authoritarianism is on the increase. This administration, this Canadian government is horrible on free speech. We've seen that with them going after the court's ruling on Jordan Peterson, but also the ability of what's his name, Trudeau, to confiscate the bank accounts of the truckers, if you remember that. It's just ongoing attacks on free speech and liberty. And Canada is really becoming more and more authoritarian. Whether there'll be a backlash against this in a future government, I don't know. I certainly hope so. Friend Harper, have you read The Prince or Utopia? I just learned about them in Reopening the Western Mind. Finished it yesterday, and I might listen to these next. Thanks for making me aware of Closing Opening Western Mind. I haven't finished the Reopening of the Western Mind, so I haven't read about Utopia. The Prince, I think, is what's his name? It's Machiavelli. So yes, I've read The Prince, but I haven't seen the interpretation of Friedman in Reopening of the Western Mind to it. But The Prince has some really interesting things to say, particularly given the time that it was written. And of course, it is part of the Renaissance. It's part of the rebirth of the West. It's definitely part of the reopening of the Western mind. I'm looking forward to continuing with the reopening of the Western mind. I've got some other projects I have to get to. My main project right now is developing this course on capitalism for the Peterson Academy. Just to remind all of you that if you want, you can attend the sessions I'm doing, the classes I'm doing for the Peterson Academy in Miami in a few weeks. You can sign up for that. You can check out my Twitter feed where I have advertised a link to go to sign up to come to be live at the classrooms that I'm giving. I hope some of you join us. It should be really, really, really fun and interesting. Crook says, but at least Tucker Carlson is not the left. Yeah, I know. That's called thinking, Crook. That's called thinking, right? If Tucker Carlson says something, then it's obviously true, and because he's anti-left, and that's what thinking constitutes. It constitutes agreeing with Tucker Carlson. That's what, for some people, constitutes thinking. All right, Apollo Zeus. What will you be doing whilst AI generates your show? I don't know. Listening to music, working out, watching Netflix shows, reading. No shortage of stuff to do. Daniel says, I started auditing a few courses at ARU and I'm loving it already, learning a lot. Excellent. Thank you, Daniel. I mean, you guys should audit ARU. You should become full-time students at ARU. You should really be engaged. All right, last comment, question. Jeremy says, thank you for your dedication to reason, Iran. I really appreciate that, Jeremy. Thank you for the support. All right, everybody. Thank you to all the super chatters. Thank you for being here. Next week, we are moving to a new schedule. On Monday, I will be interviewing Tara Smith in the evening. So it's either 7 or 8 o'clock East Coast time. And I'll be doing a news roundup at 2 p.m., I think at 1 or 2 p.m. But starting on Tuesday, we'll be doing a long show every day. It will start at 2 p.m. and it could potentially go to 5. It really will depend on you. I will prepare content, but also depend on the super chats and how many questions you ask. But every day, I am striving to generate a 2-hour show with potentially going up to 3 hours if there are a lot of questions and a lot of discussions. That will be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday every week. Now, I'm traveling quite a bit in the next few months, but when I'm home, that will be the program. On Mondays, there will always be I'm striving to have an interview in the evening and a news roundup show in the afternoon. So please consider that. I hope it's a program. Hope it's a program you will be interested in, and a format that generates support. Again, I'll have goals for each show, and we will strive to meet those goals. But But yeah, there will be no shows on the weekends. I will free up my evenings and free up the weekends. That is the benefit I get from the new program. But also there'll be, you won't have 2 shows a week. We won't keep changing the times. It will be, every week will be the same time except when I travel. So hopefully that consistency will be something you appreciate and help us grow the channel. We are growing subscriptions quite nicely again. So that is good. I am looking forward to getting to 40,000 subscribers in the next few months, hopefully. We will see. We're putting out a lot of short videos. The 1 minute videos are having a real impact out there, I think, particularly bringing in subscribers. And I will be doing a lot of commentary videos on people like Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, and others, because those generate a lot of views and a lot of engagements. So we will be doing that as well. Again, if you have videos you would like me to comment on, please send them to me at Yoran@YoranBrookShow.com. Yoran@YoranBrookShow. I won't do all of them, but I want to do more shows commenting on others, starting with the Ben Shapiro Dawkins one on cultural Christians. So please send those over as you encounter them and as you think and see things that are interesting and worth doing. So yeah, Yoran@YoranBrookShow.com. Send me links to things that are worthy of commentary. Tucker Carlson, Candace Owen, Ben Shapiro, anybody out there, right or left, that you think are worth commenting on, please do it. All right. All right. Thank you, guys. I will see you tomorrow, 1 p.m. East Coast time. 1 p.m. East Coast time. We'll have a show tomorrow. I will see you there. Bye, everybody.